Hey, this is David Wolinsky, back with another interview from NoDon'tDie.com. This time I'm bringing to you the first half of my Q&A with Laura Ruggiero, who's a filmmaker, screenwriter, and self-proclaimed story hacker based in Buenos Aires, Argentina. She and I spoke on February 9th, 2018. Just a quick reminder, if you like the work that I've been doing these last few years and I'm continuing to do, you can hop on over to NoDon'tDie.com. You'll see a link to my Patreon, where your support helps me continue on with this work that I'm doing independently. And you'll also see over there transcripts from over the years as well. Thanks for listening. And now, here's Laura Ruggiero.
All right. Well, my full name is Maria Laura Ruggiero. People call me Laura or Laura, how do we say it in Spanish. I'm from Buenos Aires, Argentina. I'm 39 years old. I'm a filmmaker. I studied image and sound design at the university, which is it's filmmaking but with a design approach. So we studied a lot of design, and we understood the idea of a user, not only a viewer, for the content that we created. And at school, when I was finishing college, I really loved technology from the beginning. And at that moment, there was no way to explore technology in school, at least in South America, in Buenos Aires. So the closest thing I had to technology was animation, 3D animation. So I became an animator at school. And I had like two passions back then. It was like storytelling and technology. And animation just, helped me create a link between those interests. And then as I started my career after school, I decided that I didn't want to be an animator per se. I didn't want to be an operator. I didn't want to be creating the 3D animations, but I will really like to write for animation or produce animation, having the technical background. So I don't animate myself, but I work a lot in different projects that contain animation. And then as I started, my career and started submitting projects and films for different film festivals, I got the chance to study abroad just for a small seminar, short seminars, in different parts of the world. And then I heard for the first time the idea of transmedia storytelling that had to do a little bit of, creating stories in a convergence of technology and art. And that kind of became my passion. It's a word that nobody really understands, but for me, my work is there. It's storytelling with technology, whatever that technology could be. So I started to focus on that, and I think I learned a lot in the process. It was pretty new here in Argentina to talk about that, and that idea that I understood how to create like transmedia architecture and how to create stories that navigate through different mediums. Since it was very new here in Argentina, I was faced with the challenge of explaining to the people what I was doing. So I started teaching because otherwise people didn't, have the knowledge to hire me. They didn't know what I was doing. So, and I always loved teaching. So I started teaching, and that went very well. So since you cannot, at least here in Argentina, you cannot be a full-time filmmaker, I became filmmaker, storyteller, and teacher. Mm-hmm. Always teaching in different universities, different like private institutions, and also doing a little bit of traveling, teaching new media, emerging media, how we call it, and that could include like the recent, VR, AR, whatever, but it's based on storytelling and how storytelling collides with technology and how we create different languages when you have a new technology available. So that's basically what I do. I have a small, very, very small company here in Argentina, and I also direct a small pop-up lab that travels around the world, which is called Story Hackers, and that's the educational part of what I do.
Well, you said, I think I think it was intentional, but you said it was storytelling with technology and not technology with storytelling.
Yeah.
Is there a distinction there? I mean, do you think there's a difference? Do you find that there are a lot of people who are in VR who think they are storytellers, but they're really just trying to showcase technology? I mean, do you find in the community of VR people that you run with, I mean, are like how seriously is this being taken like right now? Because I know it's new, and for some, this is sort of a revisiting of a technology we've seen before.
Yeah.
So I'm just sort of saying a lot of things at you.
No, that's good. I think being, calling yourself a storyteller, like I identify myself with that word, but it's also a buzzword. And you hear like a lot of people in advertisements saying, okay, I'm a storyteller. A lot of people in technology, a lot of people, in anything that sometimes they're trying to sell technology, and they call themselves as storytellers, which I think it's too much. Understanding for me, first of all, that understanding why you tell a story, why stories are important in humanity, for humanity, what skills you need to tell story, and in a way, what's a story anyway? Because if you're trying to sell me something, you could use a story, but the point of that is that you're trying to sell me something. So sometimes the story is a vehicle to something else. But I believe there are many, many people that call themselves storytellers because it's like, okay, it looks good, it feels like you have something to say, which is fine. I mean,
that's a little of what I was getting at. Yes.
Yeah, it's fine. It happens with VR. It happens with new media in general. Digital storytellers a lot everywhere, and I think at some point it makes sense. With technology, we are all given the opportunity to write, take pictures, film video, and publish it online in seconds. And we are all getting this this training on telling stories about our lives in social media all the time. This was not happening like 10 years ago. So we are all like training a little bit to be more, to tell more stories. It could be stories, it could be oversharing information. I don't know, but I think it makes sense that people are like using that word a lot. But I also believe that at some point that will go away, and the creators are really committed to storytelling. Storytelling will prevail, and you need to understand that there are some people that are natural storytellers, and the rest of us, we need to study, we need to do some research, we need to be passionate about it, and it's not just a word you use to say that you want to sell something. For me, it's not about selling something.
Right. Well, and it occurs to me too that if this does take off and it does start to become more commonplace, I think we'll start to see what we have already seen, which is us sort of taking this ability. I mean, even what we're doing right now, just having a conversation through Skype is so commonplace now. But I wonder what you've noticed as far as like, how do you think we've already started to take communicating through technology for granted? And do you see that starting to affect VR at all?
I don't know. I think I see VR as the possibility of immersive storytelling, right?
Yeah.
And I think in a way, it's a long shot to still start calling it storytelling at this point. We want VR to have its own storytelling, but it's just the beginning phase of that. The creators, and I think that evolution, will happen in the next few years, and then we'll see if VR is, as the way we see it right now, is here to stay, or it's going to be another, like wave of virtual entertainment like we had in the past. So I don't think that's like for sure. I cannot, guarantee that, VR is the future or anything like that.
Sure.
Why I cannot do that? Because I believe that for technology to be present, it either has to solve practical problems or daily problems, or it has to be able to tell you a good story and connect you with your emotions. If it doesn't, in a way, and I'm very open to understand the idea of storytelling that includes games, includes many things. But if it doesn't make you connect and with your human side, and doesn't make you feel alive or connect with your emotions, I think those technologies just fade away. It's something you cannot live on having a roller coaster ride on VR forever. So that's entertainment, and that will, the surprise of that just happen. And we need to come up with real storytelling, how we need to understand how reality is constructed to tell a story. Are we telling a story? Are we experiencing a story? I think at this moment we have more questions. We should have more questions than theories or answers. But I'm at the position that I think the best thing to do with all these technologies is to explore and see what happens, and see how it feels, either for us on the creating side and for us as users, and see and find the stories or create the stories that really make sense for that technology. That's like basic transmedia storytelling. Find a story that feels organic to the platform. If not, you're telling the same stories that you could be telling for television, for on demand, for film, for in a game, and you're transferring that to a new medium, and that doesn't really work.
Well, I wanted to ask you. Yeah, I wanted to ask you a little bit about these workshops that you've done, and I mean, I'm curious about your general experience, but I mean, what kind of things do you find that people want to create? I don't know, how does that sort of differ, sort of geographically, if at all?
No, I don't think there's a difference. I travel mostly Latin America. I'm going to be teaching workshops this year at South by Southwest, which is going to be a different experience from like sharing a talk. But I don't think the topics change much. But I do think that when people are creating, what we do at the workshops, to clarify, it's to create different story worlds where those stories can live in different mediums. So sometimes we're creating story worlds for virtual reality, for AR, for online games, for online courses for education. Each workshop has like its own platform. But what the line that connects them all is we need to come up with a story, and more than a story world. We use the technique that is called world building. Like, how do we create an emotional landscape where stories take place, and how do you interact, if you interact at all, with the user of that story? And in general, the ideas don't really differ much. there's a lot of interest in, at least in Latin America, I would say, a lot of interest in our past as societies, like tribal societies, the knowledge of our ancestors. That's something that always comes up in all the workshops. There's a lot of interest in the future, but in a future that could be related to space exploration, and also how to create an experience that talk a little about climate change, and those, like, I would say also primal fears, like where humanity is going. And I think that has to do with preconceived notions of technology. Sometimes when you tell someone that is not in this industry about VR, or if I say anyone's, like in my family, it's like I work in virtual reality, they all have these preconceived notions that you are like working with something really futuristic and robots and very science fiction. And people in general have that idea, that feeling, like, okay, well, virtual reality, that's the future. That's like flying cars, right? Um, and when they start working on that, it's kind of like very natural that they want to create experiences that connect humans with the future and the fears that we have about the future.
Yeah.
And most of the fears we have had to do with war, had to do with climate change, and also something that I've been working a lot on the past few workshops that I taught is to try to imagine different futures. We are so used to the idea that if we see ourselves like 3 generations into the future, everything is terrible, because we learned that from science fiction, right? It's like in every sci-fi movie you see, it's like everything is, there's like flying cars, and there's like metallic clothing, and but the cities are all destroyed or polluted, or there's overpopulation, and the quality of life is not well. So what happens when you have the obligation, as part of the workshop, to create a future that could deal with all that, but also needs to deal with solutions to all that.
Well, it's funny that you mention flying cars and metal clothes, because I think those are like a couple generations ago what they thought of the future. Or do you hear of new 21st century fears that people might be projecting onto VR, or expectations? Or
I think I wouldn't say it's only about VR. I think it's technology in general.
Yeah.
I think, first of all, people see in technology like it's a quick solution for something.
Mm-hmm.
For example, when a lot of people and some creators started talking about VR, they call it like the empathy machine. Okay.
Right. Yeah.
Which
was the question that I had asked you about last year. Yeah.
If we need an empathy machine as a society, if we need a device to give us empathy, we're in deep trouble. So first of all, it's like the connection is to look for like quick solutions. Like, okay, we have artificial intelligence right now, and that's gonna replace. There's a fun part that is like it's robots that they will work for us, but also there's a lot of fantasy around that, and I think people in general fail to understand that to create a virtual reality world that it's empathic, or to create an artificial intelligence that works, we need to really be able to have like emotional intelligence, because we are the creators behind those algorithms. We are the creators behind those constructions. That's why for me it's so important to create like this ideas of or story words that make sense, and that understand us as humans working with technology. I think we have a lot. I mean, it's completely contrary to like talking about technology all the time, but I think we need to learn so much about us as humans
Mm-hmm.
before we connect with technology and before we shape it into the tools that we want to.
It's funny because whenever I do talk to people about that whole empathy thing, I think most people outside of our circles have never heard of it. I've had many people think I'm just making it up.
Yeah.
But I remember at the panel last year, you made the great point that empathy also is a cultural value, that it isn't some
Yeah,
sort of universal plug-in with universal standards. Um,
exactly.
I guess I have two questions, and I guess one of them is why do you think people get swept up in that and forget that their empathy may not be somebody else's?
Um, I think it was an like an advertisement thing. The first few products that came out of VR either had to do with like roller coasters or with documentaries,
Mm-hmm.
and there were a lot of documentaries with involved social causes. And those documentaries, they were not made for a general audience. They were made for institutions. They were made for brands. They were made apparently for world leaders that didn't have a connection with reality, and they wanted to show what was going on. And I think at that point it worked, right? It worked. The people that were creating those pieces uh, had some success and made some money, or maybe, well, I don't know if they made some money. I guess I'm guessing that, but they were able to keep creating content on that line. Uh, and it was like a great, if you think about it, it's a great marketing scheme. If you're saying that you have the power to make with a device to make another person really feel what it's like to be inside or to be on the shoes of another person, or to feel like it's like if you sell it like it's completely automatic. uh, I think in the advertisement industry, they bought it. They created and they bought it, and it had to do more with commercial reasons, and it worked for a while. Um, and then I think some other creators, stop to think and say, okay, this is not so automatic. We cannot keep selling this as an empathy machine. There's got to be more than that, because in that sense, like, film is also an empathy machine if you want that. A good film, a good video game, anything that creates real connection could be an empathy machine if you want to talk about it in those terms.
Yeah.
Um, and also at that moment when it was starting, it had all this illusion of like the virtual reality, the future, the idea of having like a big headset in your head. It has a sci-fi appeal, but I think if we're talking like when we met last year and now, I think that has changed quite a bit. The idea of selling VR as empathy, it's just not so fun anymore. Thank God for everyone.
I've seen a lot more skepticism about it.
Yeah,
Yes.
yeah. But also, I think the whole idea of the first creators of VR, the pioneers, are not seeing the need for diversity in these creations. When we're talking about the creation of a new medium or a new storytelling platform or a new way to experience the stories,
Mm-hmm.
I think that's really important, because stories are like a big part of our culture. They have always been a big part of our culture, and understanding um, that to create that and to create like cultural value, not just to sell something, we need uh, a diverse group of people and a diverse access to that technology and to that conversation. I believe there are a lot of conversation being had all around the world, like about what's the language of VR, how we tell stories, what do we use it for, and that conversation it needs to be really global, and then it needs to be really diverse, and diverse in every sense you can think of. In diverse also in terms of are we having enough storytellers? Are we having filmmakers? Are we having gamers in that conversation? Are we having like people that work in documentaries, like from complete different walks of life and professions? And also people from all over the world that identify themselves as not only like American male creating content.
Sorry.
Yeah, it's all right, but that's also has to do with the access to being able to speak into different audiences and
Yeah.
and it always happened in every medium, but right now, as we see something new like emerging, and we have technology and we have social media and we have the idea of a more global society,
Yeah.
I think it should be easier.
Well, this is kind of broad, but I mean, in line with that, this is probably nebulous too, but I mean, what is the Latin American scene like for filmmakers and VR developers? Just what's your general temperature on it?
Well, I would say that for filmmakers, Latin America has quite a quite a history. Uh, I wouldn't say, even though like Argentina, Brazil, Mexico, we have like very small industries related to film. Um, it's mostly art house creations, which is, I mean, it's completely different environment because we are not working with the same. Well, it's I think the United States is the only one I could say right now that has really, or India, like an industry completely devoted to entertainment at that scale. So the creators in Latin America are mostly independent, um, which makes it at some point easier to create content because you're not worried about breaking into an industry that is like larger than life, that the industry doesn't really exist. So and there's like more possibilities and empowerment for independent creators. That on the, I would say, like the filmmaking side. On VR, there's a lot of interest. I would say like in every country that I visited in Latin America, there are some associations starting uh, to be created for immersive technologies, and also there's a lot of applications for immersive technologies that exceed entertainment or storytelling. There's a lot of medical applications, like simulators for different industries.
Right, training.
But yeah, training. But and that's been going on for a while, and I think the technology is there. It's not as available that in Europe or in the States, but it's there. It's possible to have access to this technology, and most of the people that are working in VR, in my experience, come from in Latin America. I think it's different in other places, but they come from a background in film, which makes it interesting in some ways, but also creates quite a problem with interaction because a filmmaker doesn't have really a training on interactivity, on in gaming. So I think we're still missing a little bit of that. So there's a lot of being done with 360 video, and a little bit of animation, but I think we are still a little bit behind on the interactivity design.
Yeah.
And also we have great developers, great people working with technology per se, but not so many of them can commit full time to working in entertainment or the arts.
Yeah, I was going to ask how the tech industry compares with the filmmaking industry. I mean, maybe you could just talk about the technology scene in your own backyard there, just in terms of like its past, present, and where it seems to be going. How does that compare to filmmaking?
I think it's really diverse. There's a lot of people. There are a lot of people starting to create their own companies in terms of purely technology. There's a lot of new students that are becoming developers, which is something that we really need. But I think, and that's something I see also all the time in my workshops, there's no connection still with a lot of people that are great developers, but they don't know they can use, their skills for, let's say, arts and entertainment. They don't know. They just think they can use it for other industries. And you have a lot of people that have the stories, but they don't have the technical skills to make them happen. So in every workshop, we try to connect people with those different backgrounds, the storytellers and the people with the background in technology, and get them together in the same room, share like basic common language that they need to understand to really, communicate effectively. Because with people in technology, we talk a lot about prototyping or ideas of design that with people from a storytelling background, they don't really understand that. So we try to get them together in the same room, collaborate in different teams, and help them share their passions. And a lot of great things have come out of that, because I come across all the time with a lot of people that said, oh, we have, for example, like we have an animation company, or we are into gaming and we want to explore VR. We have all the technical resources, but we don't really know what we can do with this technology, what story we can tell. And a lot of people that have a lot of stories are dying to get them done. But, these are industries that you don't really work alone. You work collectively. And the effort is to, make those words collide in one session and create those connections and help them work together.